When Caitlin Clark chose not to join Unrivaled, many assumed it was just a scheduling decision. But after the league season opener revealed a 20% attendance rate in a half-full Miami venue, Clark's absence suddenly looked prophetic. As the most talked-about figure in women's basketball, her involvement could have given Unrivaled a lifeline. Instead, Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier were left trying to sell a product without its biggest draw.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Clark's decision, whether intentional or instinctual, now reads like a silent indictment of a league that overpromised and underdelivered. Without her, the spotlight dimmed fast, and fans didn't stick around to watch what came next. The consequences are already unfolding. Broadcast ratings have tanked to an average of just 175,000 viewers across TNT and True TV, an enormous drop from last year's 221,000, even with inflated streaming metrics. True TV exclusive games dropped as low as 32,000. The model is unraveling. More games, more players, fewer viewers, and dwindling relevance. Even friendly media like Front Office Sports have gone critical. With ticket sales in question and a 20,000-seat arena on the horizon, the next flop could be public and irreversible. Unrivaled wasn't just missing Caitlin Clark. It was missing everything she represents: genuine fan interest, cultural momentum, and staying power. The Unrivaled League is unraveling, and it's doing so in real time on national television, with receipts the size of an empty 20,000-seat arena. This was supposed to be a milestone moment in women's basketball, a league created by the players for the players. A slick, fast-paced 3-on-3 alternative that could shake up the offseason, keep top-tier WNBA stars on U.S. soil, and offer fans year-round access to elite talent. But instead of a revolution, it's turning into a warning label. And it's not subtle. The Season 2 opener in Miami was supposed to be bigger and better. The league expanded the venue to fit 1,000 fans, an ambitious move considering the size of the crowds last year. But when the cameras panned across the arena, they didn't capture packed bleachers or high-energy buzz. They caught rows and rows of empty chairs. Reports say attendance was under 20%. That's not just bad, it's humiliating. The league still tried to spin it. Officials claimed the event was sold out, but anyone watching could tell something was off. There were too many gaps, too little crowd noise, and too many close-up shots that carefully avoided wide angles. If you're going to sell the story of growth, you might want to make sure there aren't literal receipts proving otherwise. And that disconnect between what the league is saying and what people are seeing, it's not helping. Fans aren't just losing interest, they're losing trust. Because when leadership tells you the arena is full, but your eyes are telling you a different story, you start to question everything. And this isn't a one-time hiccup. It's part of a growing pattern. TV ratings have cratered just as badly. Season 1 averaged a respectable 221,000 viewers per game. The championship peaked at 377,000. For a new league, that was solid. But this year, that average is now down to 175,000. And that's across both TNT and True TV combined. Some games have pulled in as few as 32,000 viewers. That's not a typo. That's the actual number for a nationally broadcast game on True TV. And the worst part? These figures are based on an updated system that's supposed to inflate numbers by combining streaming data. So the real story? Probably even worse. Let's be clear. If you're pulling YouTube-level viewership with cable production budgets, that's not just a dip. That's a red alert. TNT and other networks aren't in the business of carrying content that underperforms reruns. At some point, if the audience isn't there, the cameras won't be either. The league's leadership, including CEO Alex Basil, has tried to calm the waters with vague, forward-looking optimism. He's talked about growth, vision, long-term potential. But specifics? Not so much. Revenue from ticket sales and merch has supposedly increased, but no one's saying how much. And without those baseline numbers, the claims mean nothing. You can't throw a percentage at the wall and hope no one notices there's no data behind it. That's not transparency. That's PR fog, and fans can see straight through it. Then there's the messaging problem. From the beginning, Unrivaled's whole pitch has been that WNBA players want to stay home, that they're tired of going overseas during the off-season, and that this league gives them a better option. But when star player Alyssa Thomas says on record that she enjoys playing abroad, that undercuts the entire premise. It's not just a random comment. It's a direct contradiction of the league's core message. If not all elite players want to stay stateside, then who is this league really for? And if that narrative was exaggerated to make the league's mission sound more urgent, what else has been overstated? Let's talk about Caitlin Clark, or more accurately, her absence. Right now, Clark is the most talked about name in women's basketball. She's a walking headline, a marketing dream, and she's not here. That's not a coincidence. It's a statement. Clark chose not to participate in Unrivaled, and given how things are going, that choice is aging very, very well. She dodged a branding disaster. Because if the league can't even draw a crowd in a 1,000-seat gym, there's no way it could support a player of her magnitude. And frankly, she has no reason to be tied to a sinking ship. Her stock is only rising. Unrivaled's? Not so much. The financial model isn't just struggling, it's imploding. They've expanded the number of games and added more players, increasing operational costs at a time when every metric is trending in the wrong direction. That's not growth. That's debt with good intentions. You can't scale up when your core product isn't working, especially not when your biggest revenue source, TV, is evaporating. And let's not pretend this collapse is happening in a vacuum. Stewart and Collier, the co-founders of Unrivaled, also hold leadership positions in the WNBA Players Association. That matters, because when the side project you helped build crashes and burns this publicly, it weakens your leverage. It gives owners and the NBA more ammunition to argue that the existing structure works and that alternatives don't. In trying to prove that players could create something better, they accidentally prove how fragile these ventures really are when the market isn't on your side. And it's not just media outlets noticing. Front office sports, usually supportive of women's leagues, published a scathing report about Unrivaled's decline. That's rare. When even the most player-friendly platforms start pulling the fire alarm, the situation is worse than most people think. And then there's the Philadelphia event. This is the league's go big or go home moment. A scheduled game inside a 20,000-seat arena. The problem? The last game barely hit 200 fans. And with resale prices dropping and buzz non-existent, this is all the ingredients of a viral flop. If those seats go empty, and they probably will, it's going to be brutal. Those images don't go away. They live forever. A half-empty NBA arena during a women's pro game doesn't just look bad. It becomes the headline. That kind of public embarrassment isn't just a scar, it's a brand killer. Unrivaled didn't just misread the market. They misunderstood the entire psychology of sports fandom. Fans don't show up just for names. They show up for stakes, for drama, for wins and losses that matter. Unrivaled took away all of that in favor of a feel-good, low-pressure format. And it backfired. They assumed that access to WNBA talent would carry everything else. But fans want storylines, rivalries, consequences. Without those, even the most talented players can't hold attention. Especially not in a format most fans don't care about. 3-on-3 basketball might work in Olympic short bursts, but it doesn't carry a whole league. And now, Unrivaled is collapsing under the weight of its own ambition. What started as a bold idea has turned into a masterclass in what happens when hype outpaces substance. This wasn't a lack of talent or effort. It was a fundamental failure to understand what fans value. What keeps them watching? What gets them through the door? Right now, Unrivaled is in free fall. The numbers are bad. The messaging is worse. And the upcoming Philly game could be the final nail if it turns into the empty arena spectacle everyone's bracing for. Let's know your thoughts. Is this league fixable? Could it survive with a full reset? Or was the model flawed from the start? Drop a comment. Hit that like button if you think someone needs to be honest about this mess, and subscribe for more breakdowns just like this. Because when the hype fades and the lights go dim, that's when the real story starts. And as it stands now, this story is writing itself in bold red ink. We're not just talking about a few empty seats or a slow ratings week. This is the kind of collapse that gets case studied, the kind of misfire that sets back not just the people who built it, but the entire idea of a player-owned league. The entire vision of taking control from the top and giving it back to the athletes. On paper, revolutionary. In practice, the execution crashed straight through the floor. The sad part is, the writing was on the wall as early as week 1. A league that promised growth debuted its new season in an upgraded venue with 1,000 seats and couldn't even fill a quarter of them. That's not a rough start. That's a straight-up signal to fans, sponsors, and media. No one's watching. Yet, somehow the official response was it was sold out. That disconnect between what fans are seeing and what leadership is saying is doing even more damage than the empty arena itself. It tells people you're either completely out of touch or trying to manipulate the narrative, and both options destroy credibility. Because people saw it. The seats, the silence, the obvious camera angles that kept avoiding wide shots like they were hiding a crime scene. And all of that visual evidence made it painfully clear that Unrivaled was floundering while pretending everything was fine. But it's not fine. In fact, if the league doesn't make some drastic changes fast, it's going to be over. And not with some big press release and farewell tour. Just an awkward fade to black, with everyone quietly backing away. What's especially frustrating here is that the enthusiasm was real at the beginning. Year 1 had buzz. It had intrigue. People were curious about the 3-on-3 format, excited to see WNBA names in a different light. The league had a chance to build something slow and sustainable, but instead, it tried to sprint before it could even jog. And then it hit the wall. Let's talk ratings again, because this part can't be overstated. The league's average viewership dropped from 221,000 in its first year to 175,000 this season, even with inflated measurement systems that include streaming platforms. One game drew just 32,000 viewers. That's a high school sports live stream number, and not even a good one. You can't run a professional league, especially not one with travel costs, broadcasting contracts, venue rentals, and salaried athletes, on those kinds of numbers. And if you're a network executive looking at that performance on your schedule, you're asking one question: why are we still airing this? Because at a certain point, good intentions don't pay the bills. And now the upcoming Philadelphia event is looming like a storm cloud. A 20,000-seat NBA arena. A product that just pulled under 200 people in Miami. If this thing goes sideways, and all signs say it will, it won't just be a bad night. It will be a defining moment, one that cements the league's reputation in the worst way. Because there's something uniquely damaging about visual failure in sports. You can spin ratings, massage revenue numbers, fudge attendance stats, but you can't hide an empty arena. That's what people remember. That's the image that gets screenshotted, memed, and shared around like a digital obituary. And the league can't afford another one of those. Not after player Alyssa Thomas already poked holes in their core marketing message by saying she enjoys playing overseas. That one quote was a body blow. Because if the whole idea of a league is, let's keep players home, and one of your stars casually admits she likes going abroad, then what are we even doing? You can't market yourself as the alternative when the players don't even see it that way. You can't build your foundation on a narrative that doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Because when that illusion shatters, what's left? And what's left right now is a product that isn't compelling enough to keep fans engaged. Because ultimately, Unrivaled made a fatal mistake. It confused access with interest. Yes, people want to see their favorite WNBA stars. Yes, they care about these athletes. But access alone isn't a substitute for competition. Fans don't tune in just because they recognize a name. They tune in because the game means something. And these games don't mean anything. No standings, no playoffs, no sense of rising tension or season-long arcs. Just exhibition-style matchups in a format most American basketball fans aren't emotionally invested in. It doesn't feel like a league. It feels like a series of pickup games with fancy jerseys and branded content. And that's not enough. Sports are about stakes. That's why fans care about March Madness. That's why people cry during Game 7s. It's not just the talent, it's the urgency. And Unrivaled stripped that away in favor of something they thought would be easier to sell. Turns out, it's just easier to ignore. Even the most loyal WNBA supporters are having a hard time defending this right now. When Front Office Sports, a media outlet that practically specializes in positive coverage for women's leagues, puts out a critical piece, that's not just a shift, that's a seismic crack in the facade. It shows the people behind the scenes are worried. Quietly, maybe, but worried nonetheless. And that kind of shift matters. Because if Unrivaled loses the backing of media outlets, sponsors, and network partners, the whole structure collapses. This isn't just a bad month. It's an unraveling of the entire business model. And again, it's not because people don't want women's basketball. They do. Viewership for the NCAA women's tournament has exploded. Caitlin Clark sells out arenas. WNBA players are more visible and marketable than ever. The appetite exists. It's just that this league, this format, this rollout, it's not meeting the moment. And now, with every passing week of sparse crowds and plummeting ratings, the window for a turnaround is closing. They could pivot, scale back, rethink the schedule, bring in a more familiar format, raise the stakes. But all of that requires one thing that's in short supply right now: trust. From fans, from players, from networks. And once that's gone, it's almost impossible to claw back. Especially when the faces of the league, Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, are caught in a bind. They're not just co-founders of Unrivaled. They're leaders in the WNBA Players Association. So when their side project crashes this hard, it doesn't just damage the brand they built. It weakens their leverage in labor talks. That's the unintended consequence of all of this. In trying to create an alternative, they might have strengthened the very system they were trying to challenge. Because now the NBA can point to Unrivaled and say, see, there is no better way. And that's a hard pill to swallow. Because whether you love the idea or were skeptical from the jump, the collapse of Unrivaled hurts everyone rooting for innovation in women's sports. It doesn't just set the movement back, it gives every critic ammunition. And unless something drastic changes, this won't be a turning point. It'll be a cautionary tale. So where do things go from here? That depends on whether the people in charge can admit what's not working. Because pretending everything's fine while arenas sit empty and viewership plummets isn't going to fix this. If anything, it's just making the crash even more visible. And right now, visibility is not their friend. At this point, the question isn't whether Unrivaled is struggling. It's whether anyone involved will actually say it out loud. Because so far, all we've gotten from the top is vague platitudes about growth, momentum, and believing in the product. But no one's addressing the actual numbers. No one's explaining how a league that opened its season in a 1,000-seat gym could only fill maybe 200 of those seats and still call it sellout. No one's explaining how TV ratings fell off a cliff despite a supposedly improved, streaming-friendly measurement system. And absolutely no one is explaining why a 20,000-seat arena is being booked when the product can't even fill a high school bleacher section. This isn't just a leadership problem, it's a credibility problem. Because fans might forgive poor performance. They might forgive growing pains. But what they won't forgive is being misled. When you lose credibility, you lose the audience. And Unrivaled is already hanging on by a thread. Let's be blunt. 32,000 viewers for a national broadcast is not just underwhelming. It's disqualifying. It tells networks, advertisers, and even players that the product doesn't have a stable audience. You cannot build a business, much less a sports league, when your viewership is closer to a late-night rerun than a live event. That's not just an off week. That's a crisis. And that crisis is being felt at every level. Players are being dragged into damage control, which is never a good sign. Breanna Stewart, who should be focused on her own career and WNBA leadership responsibilities, is now publicly defending ratings. That's not her job. That's not what she signed up for. And the fact that she even has to speak up shows how thin the support structure behind this league really is. There's no buffer, no real PR machine, no executive class stepping up to face the fire. Just players putting out fires that didn't start for a league that can't even tell the truth about attendance. That's not empowerment. That's exposure. And while all this is going on, the fundamental issues with the league's product continue to go unaddressed. At its core, Unrivaled suffers from a basic misunderstanding of what sports fans actually care about. It's not just access. It's not just seeing familiar faces. It's about investment, emotional, competitive, and narrative. Unrivaled games don't count for anything. They don't ladder up to anything. There are no stakes, no championships, no rivalries with history. It's like watching a game show where everyone's playing just to have a good time. That's fine for a one-off event. But as a weekly league, there's no reason to stay tuned. No tension, no payoff, and eventually no audience. And that's why this league, despite having some of the most talented athletes in the world, can't keep fans engaged. Not because fans don't care about women's basketball, not because they don't support these players, but because the league doesn't give them anything to care about week to week. It's a tough truth, but it's the one that matters. You can't sell sports without storylines. That's what fuels fandom. That's what gets people out of their seats and onto social media. It's not just watching players. It's watching what's on the line. Who's chasing a title? Who's getting revenge? Who's the underdog? Who's the villain? None of that exists in Unrivaled. And without it, the league has no gravitational pull. No reason for fans to prioritize it over anything else in their week. Meanwhile, the players are left holding the bag, especially when the league's own selling points start falling apart. When a founding narrative is that this league keeps WNBA stars from going overseas, and then Alyssa Thomas says she enjoys playing overseas, that's not just a contradiction. That's a spotlight on the league's shaky foundation. What this really exposes is how the league built itself on assumptions about what players wanted, what fans wanted, and what the market would tolerate. And almost all of those assumptions were wrong. Players still want to play overseas if it means better pay, higher stakes, and real competition. Fans still want structured seasons with standings and outcomes that matter. And the market? It's not going to hand out credit just because you slapped a progressive label on a half-baked product. The intentions behind Unrivaled might have been noble, but noble doesn't sell tickets. Noble doesn't keep the lights on. And noble doesn't fill a cavernous NBA arena when your last event couldn't pull 300 people. That Philadelphia game could be the league's final act. And if it's anything close to what happened in Miami, the fallout will be brutal. Footage of rows upon rows of empty seats in a 20,000-seat venue? That's not just a bad look. That's brand destruction. Because the internet never forgets. And in sports, perception is everything. Once the public decides that something is a joke, or irrelevant, or embarrassing, it's almost impossible to change their mind. The window to prove legitimacy is small. And right now, Unrivaled isn't just missing it, they're closing it themselves. And here's the kicker. They still haven't owned up to any of it. No one stepped forward to say, hey, maybe we misjudged the market. Maybe we need to recalibrate. Instead, it's just the same tired talking points about believing in the mission and sticking to the plan. But what plan? Because from the outside, it looks like there is no plan. Just a vague hope that the audience will come back if they repeat the word growth enough times. But fans aren't buying it. Networks aren't buying it. And judging by the attendance numbers, even the players might be quietly checking the exits. This isn't just a failing league. It's a case study in how not to launch one. No clear market fit. No compelling format. No meaningful stakes. No transparency. No crisis management. And most damaging of all, no trust. The sports world is watching. So are fans who are rooting for this to succeed. But the silence from Unrivaled's leadership is deafening. And the damage keeps stacking up. Let us know what you think. Is there a way back from this? Should the league pivot, pause, or pull the plug? Drop a comment. Hit that like button if you're tired of watching potential get wasted. And don't forget to subscribe. We're going to be tracking every rise, every fall, and every silent gem echoing across what was supposed to be the future of the game.